Oh, you did? Denise, you were in Toronto?
Yeah, 10 years we spent in Toronto.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I used to work at 5775 Yonge Street, Stephanie.
Oh,
Oh, that's so funny. I used to work out of there as well. Okay,
Yeah.
I think we are live. Yeah, I used to work out of that office as well. That's
Yeah.
so funny. So welcome to everybody. I think we should be live at this point. Hopefully, Rick will message me at some point and verify that we're
Says we are.
So welcome to everybody who's watching us tonight. Thanks again for joining us for the Command Post. For those of you who are just joining us for the first time, Together We Stand is an organization that was created to think, support, recognize, acknowledge military families. And we spend time on the Command Post chatting about different topics that might be military family related. And today, I'm so lucky to have 4 guests with me. We're going to be talking about what it's like to transition from a serving member into a civilian and into a veteran. But before that, I just have to show you guys something really ridiculous. So bear with me for a second. So my mother came by today with a gift for me. And she was like, I know, you've been needing some new recipes for the family because I've been posting all of these things on Facebook. So she's like, and I know your family's really picky, so we're going to go with chicken. So I picked up a cookbook for you. But I'm a bit disturbed because this is the cookbook that she picked up for me. And like there's legitimately like, wait, I gotta find this for you. There's like sexy photos of how to like deal with chicken. So I'm like, I have this on my desk to be like, do I like actually look at it for recipes? Or I don't know. So if my mom's watching tonight, thanks for the really weird book, Mom. I'm super
That's nice.
Yeah.
that is awesome.
So welcome to everybody. Joining me today is Ronda, Denise, and are we not live? Hang on. Hello, are we live? I don't know, Rick's messaging me. Joining me tonight, we have Ronda, Denise, Troy, and Matt, all retired now from the forces. And we're going to listen to some of their experiences today. So I think what we'll do first, and I think I'm going to pick on Troy and Matt first because you guys have been here before with me. So we'll leave the newbies alone for a minute while they get settled. I think the first thing that I'd like to do before we talk about transitioning out is maybe talk about how you got in and what your time was like serving. What did your military journey look like? And in addition, what does your military family look like? So Troy, let's start with you.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Steph. So, my father was in the military. So, it was 1985. I'm an old guy. So I'd graduated high school in Cold Lake, Alberta. And that same summer, my dad was posted to Germany. And I wasn't very focused in high school, so I didn't really know what I was going to do. I certainly wasn't prepared for university, and I didn't have much of a plan. So I decided that the sights, the sounds, and probably most importantly, the tastes of Germany were pretty alluring. So I decided to move to Germany with my parents. And despite the fact that I already graduated high school, I signed up for school over there. Anyway, make a long story short, I was only there for about 6 or 7 months. There was a mobile recruiting center came over, and I'd actually started to, just head down a path where I might be getting into a little bit of trouble. So I decided that, joining the military, that was a free ticket back to Canada from Germany. And I thought this is, I signed on for a 3-year engagement. And I even remember saying to my mom specifically, okay, this is temporary. I'm just moving back to Canada. And,
30 years later.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. So in August of 2019, 33 and a half years later, I released, and it was all a whirlwind. So I had a wonderful career. I joined the Air Force. I started as a mechanic, and I retired out of Trenton. I had just an incredible career. It was so full of opportunity for me. And I decided my wife was military as well. And I had decided in the latter part of my career, I was the base or wing chief warrant officer in Trenton. I decided that my focus was a little bit skewed. I figured that I was, not necessarily focusing on what was truly important, being my family and my own well-being. And I decided to release, even though, I could have served for another 7 I was 51 years old, so 9 more years ultimately. But yeah, I decided that my focus was a little skewed, so it was the time was right for my release. I didn't get out bitter. I got out happy. I left a great job. I still had a great plan, a great career ahead of me in the forces, but the time was right for me to get out. So 33 and a half years later, it was a great ride for me.
33 and a half years. And how long was your wife in for?
She was in for 31 years. She joined shortly after I did. We met in high school. Actually, she was also a base brat in Cold Lake. We were very different crowds then, but yeah, she joined 31 years. That same time when I decided that my focus was skewed, June was actually not posted. She was living in Italy, in Rome, for 6 months. She was attending school. I was posted to Trenton on imposed restriction, and we were just very, very focused on what we had to do with work and the Air Force. So yeah, we decided to focus internally on each other and ourselves and on our family. And yeah, we both got out after what we consider very successful careers, and with our marriage still intact.
Still intact. Did you guys move around a lot when you were both serving?
We did. I know I've answered this question before, and I don't know that I've ever figured out the number of moves, but we did. We moved. We lived in Nova Scotia, 2 separate postings. Winnipeg, 2 separate postings. Cold Lake, Ottawa, and then I went to Trenton twice, 2 separate occasions on imposed restriction. So there was a fair bit of movement. But yeah, again, it was just, for me, it was a great career.
Awesome. So Matt, I'm going to come over to you. You have a bit of a different story. So if you'll share that with us.
Yeah. Well, not to age you, Troy, but I'm only 33. So my is different here.
Young enough to be my son.
Yeah, right. So congratulations on a very successful career, though. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, mine's a little bit different. Kind of some of the same entry stuff, though. In high school, wasn't really the best student, you could say. Not really paying attention. Sitting in a classroom wasn't really for me. Was at a crossroads in my life too, of get a job, full-time job, pay some rent, get out of the house, do something kind of thing, or go to school. So didn't do any of those options, joined the military instead. And that was in
surprise, Mom.
Yeah. Coincidentally enough, my mom didn't think that I'd actually get in because I'm colorblind, but there's different levels to it. So she was like, no way he's going to get in. And I was like, well, I'm going to Meaford in 2 weeks, so see you later. Yeah, so a little bit different story here. I went into the infantry, ended up with 2 RCR, went overseas really quick, about 5 months after, I think 5-6 months, very short after getting to the unit. Voluntarily, I wanted to go, I asked to go, ended up in a replacement pool, ended up going overseas, 2008, Task Force 308, with the KPRT, Kandahar Provincial Reconstruction Team. We had a pretty lengthy tour. It was pretty active. Ended up losing some friends, had a lot of issues from that, had a hard time coming home. Instantly, as soon as I got home, I was different. My parents knew that I was different. It came home for the couple weeks that they gave you post tour and wanted to go right back right away. I don't really remember too much of it. It was very fast paced. When I got back, I started self-medicating drugs and alcohol. And my career started going down the dumps real quick. I was AWOL all the time and becoming a little bit of an administrative burden. And I was in New Brunswick at the time too, so I didn't really have much support. Was trying to get compassionate postings back to Ontario, trying to get to Petawawa. Ended up in some legal trouble, got stuck in Ontario, and obviously at that point, my unit still wanted me to come back, but the government was saying no. It was this big rigmarole of what do I do? I'm screwed one way or the other. And ended up in some legal trouble and got through that legal trouble, but still had the military to deal with. OSIS in Hamilton really helped. My parents were reaching out asking for help.
For those watching who don't know, tell us what OSIS is.
It stands for Operational Stress Injury Social Support. So there's two sides to that. There's a family side and a peer support side for the veteran or military member. So my parents were able to reach out with Polly from the Hamilton area, phenomenal woman, does so much work. And she started the legwork of getting me posted to the transition unit in London. They went above and beyond to get me posted there. Then when I was there, I ended up getting attached to, I forget if it's 2-3 Field Am or 3-2 Field Am in Hamilton. But then I was working in the orderly room. So answering a phone at a reserve unit during the day is kind of boring, kind of lose purpose. And when you brought up discussing this topic, I wanted to try and navigate without bashing the military or anything. But at that point in time, it was a deplorable situation if you were releasing medically, the way that they went about it. It might, just in my opinion, for mental health, and it's come so far. But at that time, there wasn't really much to do. You were just sitting there waiting to get released. So that's in 2013, I ended up getting released medically. And that's.
Okay. I'm going to have a whole bunch of follow-up questions for you, but we'll pause there for a minute.
Yep.
Denise, you also have a very different experience. I think that's why I love this diverse group tonight, is because all of you are going to bring such different perspectives on what it's like to transition out. So Denise, tell us about your military career.
I spent 39 years in the military. First of all, I was a cadet when I was like a little kid, and then most of my family, my sisters, my two sisters and my two brothers, we were all in reserves together. And then I was the only one that made a career out of it. After 12 years in the reserves, I transferred to the regular force. I spent 39 years total in the service, and I was medically released in March 2016. And it's not like I wanted to get out, because I could still do my job as a clerk and an office worker, say, but I didn't meet universality of service because of my back. I couldn't do the force test anymore. I could do the express test when we had it, but they're not the force test.
Okay. So medically released as well, but in a different capacity. And Rhonda, tell us, how did you get in, and then how did you get out?
So I got in right after.
Take a drink. Take a drink.
Okay, here we go. So I actually took law all through high school, and I had planned on going through university to become a lawyer. And unfortunately, I didn't qualify for OSAP, which was really disheartening because my parents were not making enough money to barely get by. So I thought, well, I'll join the military for 3 years, save that money because I'm living in barracks, don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. I can just bank everything, and then I can go to school after 3 years. So after 6.5 years in the reserves as a radio operator, and I worked full time. I was at the regiment in Kingston. I was with 70 Comm Group. I was one of the first women to actually work at the Max Air Ground Air radio site at Trenton here, actually, in the early 90s. And that was interesting, being a woman in the combat arms trade in the early 90s, because that was kind of the beginning of everything. And yeah, it had challenges. So after I got beat up quite a bit, my body didn't want to do that anymore. I remastered to aviation technician, and I went to Cold Lake forever and a day, it felt like. Life was good. Met my husband there. We had our 3 kids. He had 2 boys from previous. And then come back to Trenton. While I was in Cold Lake, I did work some aircraft crashes where there was fatalities. And that's actually what caused my OSI, my PTSD. And I didn't even know I had one, obviously, until about 5 years later when we were in Trenton. Things started getting weird and bad. And my husband actually ratted me out to the MIR, and I got hauled in.
MIR, for those who don't know.
Sorry, it's the medical facility. I can't even remember what it actually stands for. It's basically it's where our doctors and that are, and that's where we go for all our medical stuff. So I had to go in there and see them, and then I had to start that interesting path. I wasn't completely wanting to do it, but I didn't not want to do it because I knew there was something not right. The nightmares, all that good stuff. In Trenton, I did hurt my back, although falling off an F-18 might have contributed to that as well. I also ended up breaking my foot when I was on a course in Borden, and I kind of kept going with it broken. I then got back to Trenton, broke it a second time. I ended up developing a condition called chronic regional pain syndrome. It is also known as the suicide disease because it is the most painful medical condition that you can have out there. My husband's caught me a couple of times in the garage, cut my leg off with the saw. I had the torch and everything ready to cauterize it. I was there because the MIR kept telling me there's nothing. It's not that. So finally, after several years of trying to get answers, I got answers. Because of the condition, I could no longer run. And that's why I was medically released, because I did not meet universality of service. I had no problem doing my job at all, but I just was not allowed to run anymore because my foot would just continually break. So I have to be careful at what I do. Funny thing is, in September, I broke my foot as well again.
My goodness.
I know, I had a new puppy. Day one, I stepped on him, and yeah. So good times. So I was medically released for my foot. I was not mentally ready to go. The job I had in Trenton, I was running the oil analysis laboratory for the entire Air Force, and I was one of the hydraulic specialists for the whole Air Force. So I had a pretty big role I was playing, and I loved it, and I loved the responsibility and the toughness of the job. And sometimes you have to call some pretty big shots, and I had no problem doing that or making the decisions that had to get done. So really my release, I kind of felt more like I was fired. Kind of like, here you go, bye-bye now. Yes, it's a medical release because of my foot. Yes, I can go back to school. Just recently, I'm starting to come to grips with everything.
How long has it been now, Rhonda? Remind me?
2 years.
2 years.
I've been out for 2 years.
Okay.
And I'm just starting to do my thing now. So
a question. Sorry, keep going, and then I'll ask.
Part of my therapy was like sewing and keep myself busy. So I'm kind of turning that into my future.
Okay.
So just I'm trying to chug forward. My kids are happier now that I'm not having meltdowns regularly and being nasty is a good word.
I wanted to take a minute here because we do have some individuals saying hello to all of you and thank you for sharing your stories. We have people watching from Gander in Newfoundland. We have from Medicine Hat, from Trenton, from Toronto. So you guys are sharing your stories coast to coast tonight. So thanks again for being with us. So I have a whole bunch of questions about transitioning. I find it a really fascinating area of those who have served. So my first question is, if you are medically retiring or if you have decided that it's your time to release, does everybody go through what is now known as, or what was the JPSU but is now known as the transition unit, or is that just for individuals who've been injured?
That's just for individuals that are medically releasing.
Okay. So Troy, you did not have to go through the transition unit, is that correct?
No, that's exactly right. I didn't go through the transition center, but I will say, and I actually thought, now again, I've been out for a couple of years, so my information is dated, but just before I released, they had begun to introduce some policy and some practice whereby they wanted all releasing members to go through the transition centers. It was one of the reasons why they changed some of the name of the names within the group. But yeah, so but personally, I did not go through a transition center. I just I just transitioned out on my own, actually.
Okay, so I'm gonna treat this a little bit differently. So Troy, I'm gonna come to you first, and I want to know, what is it like what's the mentality like when you are transitioning willingly and you are ready to go in a sense from serving member to civilian? What's that process look like in your head? How do you mentally prepare for that?
Yeah, I actually think, and you alluded to this earlier. I think this one of the marvelous things about the people that you've collected here on the screen today is all of our experiences will be different, because I actually am of the belief that transition out for everybody, it depends so much on your circumstances, so much on your career, so much on your own well-being, that the experience is very personal and individual. But what was it like for me personally? So, I made the decision different than everybody else on the screen. I actually consciously made the decision to end my career, to transition to something different. And so for me, a large part of me was mentally prepared for that. And I always professed that the military didn't define who I was, my job, rank, none of that. I tried not to allow that to define me as a person. But it still does get woven into your fabric, for me anyway. It was just the fact that I'd served for 33 and a half years. It was all that I knew. I'd never been through, I went through one job interview in my entire life, and that was when I was 17 years old and joined the military. So what was the process like? I thought I was fully prepared and ready to retire. I went from a very hectic job, a very high-paced job, a very high-paced location, to being retired. There was a transition right there, just in and of that, in and of itself. But it still took me some time to come to grips with my new life, with my new chapter. That's the way I chose to look at it. One chapter ends, another one begins. One isn't better necessarily than the last, but just one chapter ends and one chapter begins. So it took me it probably took me about a year and a half actually to really get comfortable in not being in uniform. I remember specifically my wife and I, we decided to travel almost as soon as she got out. She released in September of 19. In October, we took our RV and headed south to Florida. And I remember going to a ceremony on Remembrance Day down in, I don't think we're in Florida. I think we're in Myrtle Beach or in South Carolina. But, we went to a ceremony and it was, again, it was the first, it wasn't a Remembrance Day ceremony. They don't celebrate, that's the wrong choice of words. They don't recognize Remembrance Day the same way we do in Canada. But it was the first opportunity where we both just kind of sat quietly with our thoughts, thinking about not being military and thinking about our service and our experiences. And anyway, I don't know that I answered your question, Steph, but the transition, it certainly took some time, even though I went out on my own terms.
Yeah.
It still,
there was still okay, I have follow-up questions for you, but I want to give everybody else an opportunity. Matt, you came in and how long were you actually in for? Because you had a lot packed into a fair, when I say short period of time, I'm calling it relative to the 33 year-long career here.
I ended up in, I think it was like 7 years.
7 years. Okay, so still a pretty significant amount of time. And you came in, you came out with a fairly traumatic experience. What was it like for you? What was that, not the actual process, but what was the mental process of trying to deal with the fact that you were going from serving to civilian? What was that transition period like for you?
Honestly, it's kind of a loaded question, I guess, because
that's okay. Yeah. Hopefully it's okay with me. Hopefully it's okay with you.
Yeah. There was just so much going on at that time that I was already trying to process and trying to come to grips with my new look on life and my own thoughts about life and how I interact with people and trust levels. And so I was already going through so much. I felt like the process, though, of what I was going through felt a little unjust. It almost felt like being kicked to the curb.
Right.
To sum it up real, like short and sweet, would be the hero to zero. That's and almost like a number, like we're done with you. So I don't know if you want me to go more in depth.
No, that's really powerful. I'm curious, Denise, if that resonates at all with you, because you got out because of an injury, but you said you weren't ready to get out. You
Yeah.
felt that you were ready. You were prepared to still stay in it.
Yeah. My last 6 months, they sent me downtown to work at a civilian position. And that was about the time when I was actually having trouble knowing that I was having to get out. Because like I said, I could still do my job sitting at my desk, and which I'm doing now as a public service now again. I'm still doing pretty much the same job as I was doing in the military.
Right.
And to me, it just felt like, and not to mean mouth the military at all or anything like that, but the transition for me, like I didn't want to get out. Like honestly, like it seemed to me like they just were not getting me out the door fast enough for them to please them.
Right.
And that's why they sent me downtown to work at a civilian company, just to get some experience. I didn't get my priority hire position until January 2018, which is the civilian position that I have now. And I knew that's what I wanted to do, but it was just a matter of trying to get all the paperwork done and all that for the civilian human resources.
Rhonda, I'm curious for you, because what I find so interesting, and this is said with zero judgment, this is just me trying to process your story. You had gone through so many injuries, like you were physically broken on several occasions, and you also had an OSI.
Oh, yeah.
What was it about being part of the military? Why did you not feel that it was time for you to go? Did you just feel that you still had so much more to contribute? Were you just not mentally prepared to make that change? What is it, did you feel it was unjust that you were being kind of pushed out the door? Walk us through that thought process.
It was more of I loved my job. Like, I mean, they say if you love what you do, it'll never feel like a day of work. And I tell you, the job that I was doing before I left, that was my thing. I loved it. I was told I did it well. I felt like I did it well. I had a lot of respect from people around me. And when I did discover a problem, they listened, and I had lots to contribute. I did a lot of traveling. That part I didn't like so much because I missed a lot with my kids, but leaving for me, it happened at a weird time as well. So I was lucky I got a retention. So I got an extra 3 years before my release. When I was leaving, they were changing all the rules where if you could still do your job, there was kind of like a little caveat there where you'd be able to stay in, but you forfeit your rights to have the medical release. So all the benefits that were there for medical release. So I had bosses trying to work that angle, but it didn't come through till about 3 or 4 months after I was already out. So by then it was too late for me. So, and now honestly, my weeks are filled with appointments. So I'm at medical appointments 4 times a week for physio and osteo and massage, just so that I can sit upright and walk. So now that I've had that time to be home and look at things, yeah, you know what? It probably was my time. Like I spent 27 and a half years in the military right from high school. So that's all I knew. That was it. So yeah, so now I'm kind of understanding that, you know what? This is where I'm at. I need to do this for me so that I'm here for my family. So just kind of juggling things, accepting things. Funny thing is, a couple weeks ago, I got a phone call from the unit I was at because somebody had some questions about something that I had been involved in. So that was kind of nice. And the weird thing was, it was like I had never left. So I had all the information. I still remembered what books, I still remember what chapters it was in. And I kind of, had all that going there, like, oh man. So they're like, we wish you were still here. So that was kind of a nice thing. But I know that it's better for me physically
Yeah.
and probably mentally just to kind of do my thing. And my husband's got 35 years in January, and I'm hoping if they do send him away posted, because he's getting promoted this year, but I have one who's only got a couple of years left of high school, so I'm not leaving. I'm still not done college myself, so I'm still working at that, struggling through. I had to take that big break because COVID happened, so I'm trying to homeschool children and try and do my own college, and it just it was too much for me on the mental side, and
Yeah.
I had a lot of PTSD stuff starting to come back, so I kind of got grounded from school and was told just to kind of stay home. I splurged. I bought myself a hot tub so I could relax in the backyard.
Good for you. So I'm going to put my questions on hold for a second because I'm getting a question from some individuals who are watching. And it says, although not all members go through the transition unit, and it doesn't mean that they require assistance immediately upon release. Is there assistance available at a future time for members who are having a hard time coping with their release other than Veteran Affairs? Are there resources out there for veterans who are having a hard time with coping with their release?
Yes. So the MFRC, Military Family Resource Centers, they have them on bases. And as I was transitioning out, they have a program for veterans who are being medically released. I know that they wouldn't turn away. I don't think that they would normally turn away any veteran right now, but I know for medical release, they have a program. It's like a 2-year. They do lots of, like I've been asked actually to teach sewing, but of course with COVID, I can't right now. So once that comes up, that'll kind of be maybe something I'll get into a bit. But they've got people who do like leather crafts and people who do painting. So art for therapy. And there's a few other that kind of program that they have through there. I think they got Tai Chi as well. At least that's the one in Trenton. They've got quite a few programs. I can't speak for other bases, but I know that when they started this program, this was kind of like the beginning point. So they are trying to model it after what they did here in Trenton for the community and that.
Okay, that's great. That's amazing to know. I'm curious to know, because we are a family focused organization. So I do want to ask one thing about your family. For all of you, this is a question for all of you, so I'll let you guys decide who wants to go first. How did your transition and you coping with your transition affect your family unit?
I'll go first. Okay, so I got just a little story. So when I decided to release, again, I mentioned earlier that my wife was over in Italy. So when I decided to release, she was coming home for Christmas. So I decided that I was going to fill in the release papers and kind of give that to her as a gift of us for Christmas. And
that's so cute.
Well, see, a lot of people have said that, but then other people that know me well have said, "Man, you're cheap. You printed off some paper and gave that as a gift. Like that's the cheapest gift ever." But the reason I bring that up is, I remember again, my son, so he was 26 years old at the time. And, I remember his response and how happy the kids were that we were going to focus on each other and family. And, I think that they could see that the effect of our careers, the effect of our jobs, the effect that it was having on us physically and mentally. So, it was a pretty impactful interaction for me with at Christmas time. So, yeah.
And as because it said you had said it took you about 1.5 years to kind of get comfortable with the fact that you were in fact retired. Did it affect your relationships with your family at all, or did you keep that separate? Were they impacted at all?
Yeah, again, everybody's circumstances is different and unique, and because June had also released, she was going through her own transition process. So we're going through the same process individually, but together. And how did it affect? I mean, I would like to think that our relationships have drastically improved since release, and since we're comfortable with the transition. But I don't want to imply that they weren't great before, because they were fantastic. But again, just with a renewed focus and a renewed energy on what truly is important in life, and with much less distraction. So that's really what it boils down to for us. So things are so much better for us.
Good. Matt, how did you were not married at the time. Your parents were very much involved in your transition, from what I remember from the last time you were on. So how did your transition affect your family?
The complete opposite of what was just said. My transition really, I guess, started like the day I got home from overseas. And just becoming slowly distanced from my family, unless it was chaos, and everything then was an emergency matter, right? So from my parents, my dad, one day when I had a suicide attempt, shortly after getting home, and my dad literally dropped everything, drove from Hamilton to New Brunswick, stopped working and everything just to be there. So their lives were impacted from my experiences at that point, and continue to be, I guess, at this point too. Going through the process, it was obviously lots of ups and downs. And then I ended up with someone here in the Hamilton area, and then we had my son, and that was a roller coaster as well. I was just not ready for therapy. I was also going through the process of being angry at the military, being angry at the world in general. So there'd be glimpses of good days, but then they're followed by just crappy days, and I'd go from one end of the spectrum to the other. So that was an impactful situation for her at the time, living with her, and my parents too, because then they would be a part of that process. And then I had my son too, so then my family was impacted by that as well. Like, where do you draw that line of support for me and what's best for them? And we ended up not talking for about a year as well, my family. And then it was probably in the last 4 years, I want to say, so I've done different inpatient programs and stuff as well. Probably in the last 4 years that I really have been able to take therapy serious and try and change my outlook and perspective on life. And my family, my parents specifically, have been impacted greatly in a negative way because of I think they both have secondary PTSD issues, and have both gone to therapy because of me and my experiences and their experiences with dealing with the military and trying to get me help as well. And I don't know if that's really made us stronger long-term or anything like that at this point, but we're at a point now where I think even with my ex and my son and we're really amicable and in a healthy, safe environment. So it was terrible at first, but things are looking better, I guess. Is the
Denise, did your transition, or while you were transitioning, did that impact your family? You have 2 kids, you have a husband.
My ex-husband was getting out the same time, medically as well, almost the same time. So we sort of fed off each other as to the process and all that. Mind you, we were both the same trade as well, and the same rank when we were medically released. So it didn't really affect the kids any, other than I think my ex-husband had a bit of a harder time because he took everything he could get from Veterans Affairs and CISIP and all that, but I didn't want anything from them. My case manager at Veterans Affairs, actually, she set me up with the VIP program for Veterans Affairs, and which is like I get money for snow shoveling in the winter because I can't shovel snow, obviously, because of my back, and yard maintenance.
Awesome.
And I sort of thought about that because I didn't really want it.
That's interesting that they have, like, for those watching who didn't know that, that's amazing that they have that benefit available.
Yeah.
Rhonda, how was your family affected by your transition out?
My parents were really, really happy. because I'm only 2.5 hours away now, although I haven't seen them in about a year, so that's been tough. My daughter was in tears because that means I didn't have to go away anymore. And she was 9 at the time. And the boys were like, "Oh yeah, good. You're gonna be home now, and like now we'll have like you won't be traveling, and we'll have like real meals and not eat so much pizza." And yeah, so that's been nice. I was gone a lot with my other job, so being home is been really good for all of us. Lots of family game nights, and kind of we do a lot more family things, kind of try and get more outings in. I don't have to worry about getting called in on the weekends. I don't have to worry about having to stay late at work or extra projects where my brain is working all weekend long trying to figure work stuff out. So I get up in the morning and it's my kind of day. I can do whatever I want, whatever I feel like doing. So that's complete 180-degree change
Great.
from my life in the military. So
very positive. That's excellent.
Yeah.
So I have a few more questions. I can't believe we're actually coming up to 20 to 9 already. I'd like to know, I'm trying to pick my questions carefully because I know that we have limited amount of time. I don't want to go into bashing the military. It's just not what we do here. I prefer to see if there are, I'd like solution-based questions. So my question is, did you feel that you had an adequate amount of support while you were transitioning out, whether you were releasing the way that Troy did or medically releasing? Did you feel that there were enough resources there to help you transition out? And if not, what are some potential solutions that could be put in place? What are some resources that might have been nice for you to have that would have helped you, that would have made life easier in terms of transitioning? Just because we've been doing a roundtable. Troy, we'll start with you.
Okay. Yeah. So this might sound odd, but no, I don't think that there was enough support, enough assistance for the release process. It's actually, it's overwhelming, is the way I would describe it. That's the way I felt anyway when I decided to sign my release and run through the process. Again, recognizing that all of our experiences are the same. So what are the solutions? Again, when I was in, I know that they had planned on increasing the responsibility of transition centers to helping all members who were going to release through the transition center, potentially increase funding or programming at family resource centers like Rhonda mentioned. All of those things can help folks. And I think the other thing to consider, even on this particular episode, when we released also is important to note, because I think that there has been some improvement. And I'm not, I think that there has been some distinct improvement in the release process from years ago. It's better now, but it's certainly not where it needs to be. And again, even my information is dated. It's 2 years old. So
Right.
it wasn't where it needed to be in 2019. But I saw some positive movement forward. There were some good initiatives.
And Troy, I just as a follow-up there before I go to the others, when you say it was an overwhelming process, is it administrative that there's just so much paperwork that you have to go through, or is it that there is such a change between serving and civilian life that you wish you had someone there to help you with that process and some resources there to help you with that? What is it that you found overwhelming about transitioning?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is yes. There is a lot of paperwork that's required, and again, even though I released from Trenton as my last job, I was in Ottawa. It was where my actual last release appointment was. The people that you go see to help with or to run through the administrative process, they've done those releases 3, 4, I don't know, hundreds of times, and it's the first and only time that I'm ever going to release from the military. So it was all brand new for me, even though they had gone through it many times before. I found the administrative process to be a little bit overwhelming, not complicated necessarily, But again, the truth is my release was probably easier administratively than many others because I was a voluntary release. But again, I didn't have a JPSU Joint Personnel Support Unit or a transition center to help with the release either, because I understand now that they are taking on a little bit more responsibility. I have many friends who work in those centers, and I think they're doing great work. So they made some great improvements from the time when we released people. When we sent them overseas on these task forces, they did these incredible things and came back, and we did nothing to support them. We've improved since then, but still are not where
I would imagine there's still more work to be done. Matt, when you got out, did you feel that you were well supported, or if you were, or even if you weren't, what were you lacking? What would have helped with that? And understanding that you probably weren't in the best place mentally at the time.
Honestly, I don't think it's a military issue. I think it's been a societal issue at large when it comes to mental health. And our society as a whole has taken huge leaps and bounds in understanding that mental health is to be taken serious. And so I don't really, I don't know at the time what would have been sufficient. And I don't know, I don't have an answer for long term either, but I'd follow up with saying that they're trying. And I can only speak from my experiences. And at the time that I was being released, I know that there was a lot of us being released around that time that were kind of just pushed through the door. And I think like the JPSUs and stuff at the time were thrown together as a Band-Aid, and they were going through the growth process as well. So I would echo what Troy said too, with it's coming along leaps and bounds. I'm not here to bash the military or anything. I was angry at the time, and looking back, I can see why it was the way that it was. Afghanistan took off and it just got out of control. And a lot of us went through stuff that we weren't prepared to go through, and they weren't prepared for us to go through that stuff. So I don't know exactly what would have been better at that time to go through, but things have changed just in society alone, I think. So
absolutely.
Mental health, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a very, very valid point. Denise, what do you wish that you had in place that might have made your process a bit easier and that made you feel a bit more supported?
What do I wish that we had in place? I think somebody needs to sit down with somebody, with whoever's releasing, and really go through the steps, step by step almost, as to what to expect, because there's a lot of transition. There's a lot to transition. Like you have to find a doctor, you have to find a dentist, you have to find maybe a house to live in, or a place where you want to live, or what you're going to do for the rest of your life, that kind of stuff. And it is, like Troy said, for me, even because my last position was working, I was a senior resource management clerk at the Joint Personnel Support Unit in Winnipeg. And I knew what to expect, because that was my job. I had to help people with their stuff,
right,
with their transition stuff. And I thought it was overwhelming myself, because there's so much. And like, you don't know when your pension's going to start when you get out, and like how long it's going to take.
And Rhonda, how about you? Did you feel that you were adequately supported, or what would have made that process a bit easier for you?
Well, I dug my heels in good. So I tried every avenue I could think of to not leave.
Mm-hmm.
So all that was kind of exhausted pretty close to the end. So the paperwork part of it, I found it relatively easy. I filled it all in. I went to the release section. They said, yeah, it's all good. Here's your copy. Thank you. Have a nice day. Come back on this date. Hand in your ID card. I'm like, okay, everyone's been telling me it's so bad. And I'm like, where's the bad right now? And I don't know if it's because to me that part was easy, because I was trying so hard on the other side to not leave.
Right.
So when it came time to get everything done, like they do a depart with dignity ceremony, and mine couldn't happen until about 3 months after I was out, because they had to order everything It was about a 2-week window because they were also trying as hard as they could to find an avenue to keep me.
Right.
Just be that changeover happened in policy. It just, I guess, kind of a little bit of a uniqueness for me on that aspect because I was stuck right at the change. So I didn't know which way anything was going to go. I didn't know yes, no, what am I doing tomorrow? Like, so that part was confusing because I had all these voices saying different things, do this, do that. And once I need to do this, that was really easy.
Okay.
So
Good. So
I never went to the transition center. It was never even a thing for me. So
that's okay. There's a positive in the story somewhere then. So we're coming up to the top of the hour. My final question to all of you is, or it's a two-part question. Now that you've all had some time to sit in your release and reflect back, number one, what do you wish you would have known before releasing? And number two, what do you wish others knew about those who are releasing, whether it's civilians or whether it's those in your family? So what do you wish you had known and what do you wish others knew? And Troy, I'm going to pick on you and come back to you and circle back.
I was afraid of that. So what do I wish that I knew? You know what? I actually can't even think of anything necessarily that I wish that I knew. What do I wish that? Well, you know what I do. I wish that I knew that I would be okay. That there's life on the other side, and frankly, life is pretty good. So for me, anyway. So that's what I wish I knew. I wish I knew I was going to be okay. And what do I wish for others? And it's kind of along the same lines that I hope that people can just really, it's all back. You can even relate it to the COVID thing. Just focus on truly what is important in life and long term and families, relationship, people versus career, work, and some of those other less important things. So that's it.
Good. Matt, what do you wish you had known at the time, and what do you want people to know now?
I wish I knew at the time the support that there is after you get medically released. So a big hurdle that a lot of us go through is, and this I'd say us because I went through it myself, is not knowing like financially what are you going to do. We actually get treated phenomenal here. It can be a bit of a process medically going if you get released and then trying to go back and get those financial benefits and stuff like that, but it is there. So I think a lot of that would have taken away a lot of stress, knowing that I'm not just going to be kicked to the curb and that's it kind of thing. So I wish I knew more of that process. And I'm sure that they explained some of that along the way, but it's like drinking from a fire hose sometimes when they throw that information at you. What do I wish that society as a whole knew?
Yeah.
That's for like my specific release or just like people releasing in general?
Your wish that people about transitioning and what if somebody was to see you on the street and you were transitioning, what do you wish they knew about you?
I wish that there would just be no judgment involved, I guess, if anything. If that makes sense. Not putting it like having people not put labels on things, and maybe not just me in general, but yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that does. That absolutely does. Denise, I'm going to take it to you. What do you wish you had known before you released, and what do you want for other people to know?
I think with like Troy, I wish I knew I was going to be okay too, like back then, which I am. So like I'm totally okay. What I wish for others is not to let it stress you. And if they need help with anything, get it as soon as you can, because it'll relieve the stress of the whole situation, of the whole transition. Like talk to somebody that's been through it. Talk to you're a case manager at the hospital, talk to a friend that's been through it already.
Good.
Just
I like
get
that.
help
I like
before
that.
it overwhelms you.
And Rhonda, I know you were nodding your head when Troy said, it's nice
That's
to know
my
that you wish you'd
answer.
been
Exactly what I had.
I
Oh my God. Yeah, I wish I had known that, you know what? I didn't have to dig my heels in like I did because I was afraid. And I can say I was afraid of what was on the other side. And it's taken me a couple of years, like I said, to kind of just accept everything. But once you accept, this would be my thing for the other people out there. When you get to that place where you can accept, that acceptance makes a huge difference on where you go, and then you stop internalizing everything and stressing about everything, because it's like, okay, I got this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We're good. Like, yes. It's all about me now and my family, and it's, not having to be on somebody else's clock or whatever. And, if I want to stay in bed, I'm going to stay in bed. If I want to tell the kids, hey, you know what? Nobody's going to school today. We're going to go to Canada's Wonderland or something like that. Just because I can. I don't have to put a leaf pass in to go visit anybody. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. So that's nice.
That's awesome. No, I like that. Well, we've come to our time. I can't believe how quickly that went by. I thank all of you so much for so candidly, so honestly sharing your experiences. The vulnerability and the ability to open up and share is so appreciated and so valued by us at Together We Stand, because I believe that it really helps others that might be going through the same thing. So thank you all. I hope to have you on here again. And thank you to all that are watching at home. We appreciate your time, and I wish you all a very good evening.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Happy birthday, Steph.
Stephanie.
Thank
you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.